It started with a rainstorm that didn't belong in July. The sky cracked open above Manhattan just as Ethan Monroe stepped out of the black town car. His suit was untouched by the drops. The umbrella held above him by his driver was steady. But his thoughts weren't. He had just closed the biggest deal of his career. Numbers that would land him on magazine covers. Headlines that would name him the youngest self-made mogul in the Northeast. And yet, something felt off. He stepped into the lobby of his penthouse building. Nodded to the doorman without making eye contact. Took the elevator up. Alone. As always. 42 floors above the noise of the world. Ethan's world was quiet. Sterile. Expensive. And completely empty. No one waited for him. No voices filled the air. Just silence. Except tonight. There was something else. A sound. Soft. Almost too soft to be real. Like someone had left the television on in another room. But he didn't have a television in the hallway. He turned toward the sound. The voice was shaking. Childlike. Small. Barely above a whisper. Please don't leave. Please. He moved toward the front door again. Thinking maybe someone was in the hall. A neighbor's kid. Something innocent. But when he opened it, he saw her. A little girl. Maybe 5. Standing barefoot on the marble floor. Her dress soaked from the rain. A pink stuffed animal clutched to her chest. Her lips trembling. Her cheeks streaked with tears. She looked up at him. Eyes wide. As if she had been waiting. As if she knew this was the door that would open. Please don't leave, Daddy. Her voice cracked. I waited for you. Ethan didn't move. Didn't breathe. He wasn't a father. He had never been married. Never even been serious with anyone. Not since long before his name meant anything to the world. And yet, this little girl was standing at his door. Calling him Daddy. Who are you? He finally asked. His voice colder than he meant it to be. She flinched. Clutched the stuffed bunny tighter. You don't remember me. Her voice was smaller now. Like the weight of the world had just gotten heavier. Ethan shook his head. Looked down the hallway. Empty. The elevator hadn't moved. No sign of anyone else on the floor. Where is your mother? He asked. The girl looked at the floor. Then back at him. Her eyes didn't look scared. They looked familiar. Too familiar. She said nothing. I don't know who you are. He repeated. Trying to make sense of the impossible. She stepped closer. Her shoes squished from the rain. But she didn't stop. Didn't ask again. Just looked up at him and whispered. I'm sorry. I won't bother you anymore. And just like that, she turned. Started walking away. Down the long hallway toward the elevator. Alone. Wet. Shaking. Ethan watched her go. His heart pounding for reasons he couldn't explain. He should have closed the door. Should have called someone. Security. A neighbor. Anyone. But he didn't. Because something in her eyes. Something in the way she said Daddy. Had broken something inside him. Wait. He said. His voice caught in his throat. The girl stopped. Turned slowly. Her face hopeful. Tired. Like this wasn't the first time she'd begged someone to stay. What's your name? He asked. The elevator chimed behind her. She didn't move. I don't know. She said. Ethan's chest tightened. The hallway felt smaller now. Like the air was folding in. He took a step forward. Then another. And for the first time in years, he forgot about his deals, his schedule, his carefully built walls. He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go inside," he said. "You can tell me everything." But she just shook her head and looked down at her stuffed bunny. "I'm not allowed to go with strangers, even if they look like Daddy." The door at the end of the hallway opened. A woman stepped out. Dark hair, tired eyes, holding a clipboard. She called the girl's name. The girl didn't answer. The woman looked up, noticing Ethan for the first time, and froze. So did he. Because her face, even older, even sadder, was one he had seen before. Years ago. Only once. A name he had forgotten. Until now. And before he could say a word, she turned around and walked away, taking the girl with her. Ethan stood there, frozen, dripping silence all around him, and one question thundering in his head. What if she's mine? Ethan stood frozen in the hallway, the echo of the woman's footsteps fading down the marble floor, the girl's soft sobs barely audible behind the closing door. His heart hammered against his ribs like a warning drum. Every thought inside his head shattered into 1,000 pieces. The name he had forgotten, the face he had tried to erase. They collided like a storm. Who was she really? And why had she brought this little girl to his door? Ethan's mind raced back years ago. A brief encounter. A fleeting moment. A promise never kept. He shook his head as if to clear the fog. The sound of his phone buzzing snapped him back to the present. He glanced down. A message from his assistant. Urgent meeting rescheduled to 3 p.m. But he couldn't focus. Not now. The image of the girl's tear-streaked face haunted him. Her whispered plea. "Daddy." He stepped into his penthouse apartment. The silence was suffocating. The grandeur meaningless. Every expensive piece of furniture suddenly feeling cold and hollow. He paced toward the window overlooking the city. The skyline glittered with lights. But Ethan's world felt dark. How could he explain this? How could he even begin to understand? Minutes later, his phone rang again. This time it was his lawyer. "We have the final documents for the East Coast expansion." Ethan nodded to himself. His professional world demanded attention. But his personal world was unraveling. He sat down at his massive oak desk, scrolling through the documents. But his thoughts kept drifting back to the little girl. "Who are you?" he whispered aloud. "Why did you call me Daddy?" The next morning, Ethan arrived early at his office. His mind clouded with questions. His eyes tired from sleepless hours. As he sat in his corner office, his assistant knocked gently. "Mr. Monroe, there's a visitor downstairs who insists on seeing you." Ethan frowned. "No appointments today. She says it's important and won't leave." His heart skipped a beat. He grabbed his jacket and headed down. The lobby was busy with the usual hum of people. But at the corner near the elevator stood the woman from last night. Her eyes tired but determined. Beside her stood the little girl, clutching the same pink stuffed bunny. Ethan's breath caught. He stepped forward cautiously. "Who are you?" he asked again. His voice softer this time. The woman looked at him, her eyes flickering with fear and something else. "Hope, maybe." "My name is Claire," she said quietly. "I know this is hard to believe, but..." She stopped. The little girl tugged her sleeve. Claire looked down at her daughter. Then back at Ethan. "This is Emily," she said. "She's your daughter." The world seemed to tilt. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. "How?" was all he could say. "How is this possible?" Claire took a deep breath and began to tell a story. A story of a brief relationship, a secret kept, and a child raised alone. Ethan listened, every word breaking and building something inside him. Emily looked up at him, her eyes full of longing and fear, waiting for him to say something. Anything. But Ethan was silent, frozen in the weight of it all. The lobby noise faded away. Time seemed to stop. "Please don't leave," Emily whispered again. And this time Ethan knew. He couldn't. Ethan sat silently in the conference room, the vast cityscape visible behind him through the tall glass windows. The room was quiet except for the faint breathing of the 5-year-old girl, Emily, sitting beside Claire, her mother. The weight of Claire's words hung heavy in the air, thick with years of silence and secrets. Claire took a deep breath, steadying herself before speaking again. "It wasn't easy to come here, Ethan. I was scared of what you might say, scared of what this could mean for Emily and me." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady, fixed on Ethan's. Ethan's gaze shifted to Emily, the little girl clutching her pink stuffed bunny tightly, her eyes wide and full of a mixture of fear and hope. The innocence in her expression struck a chord deep within him, one he hadn't realized was missing from his life. Claire continued, "When I found out I was pregnant, I was alone. You had just left the country on that business trip. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought maybe you wouldn't want to know." She swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. "So I kept it to myself. I raised Emily on my own, trying to give her the life I could." Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The realization that he had a daughter, this little girl right here, calling him daddy, shook him to his core. "Why didn't you try to contact me sooner?" he asked quietly, guilt creeping into his voice. Claire looked down, tears brimming in her eyes. "I wanted to, but every time I thought about reaching out, I worried about your reaction. I didn't want to disrupt your life, your career. I thought I was protecting Emily. But she needed to know you. She needed to know her father." Emily suddenly looked up, her voice soft but pleading. "Please don't leave, Daddy." Her eyes searched his face for any sign of rejection, any hint that she wasn't wanted. Ethan's heart ached. He reached out slowly and took Emily's small hand in his. Ethan's heart ached. He reached out slowly and took Emily's small hand in his, feeling the warmth of her tiny fingers wrap around his own. The business deals, the contracts, the endless meetings, all the things that had filled his days suddenly seemed insignificant. "I'm here now," Ethan whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I won't leave you." For a moment, the room was silent except for the soft sound of Emily's breathing and the faint hum of the city outside. Tears streamed down Claire's face as relief and hope washed over her. Emily gave a small, hopeful smile, the first genuine smile Ethan had seen from her. But Ethan knew this was just the beginning. There were still questions that needed answers, wounds that needed healing, and a relationship that needed building from the ground up. He looked at Claire, then back at Emily, determination settling in his eyes. "Let's start again," he said firmly. As they left the conference room, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change forever. The walls he had built around his heart were crumbling, and though the path ahead was uncertain, for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Days passed, and Ethan's life began to change. He started waking up early. Not just for his work at the office, but for the little girl who had quietly become a part of his world. Emily. The same girl who once hid behind trees, now smiled gently when she saw him. The same child who once trembled in fear, now held his hand when they walked together. His meetings with Claire also became more frequent. Ethan found himself trying to understand all the battles Claire had once fought alone. All the pain she had buried deep. The truth she had never shared with him. But he needed to know. Because this time, he wanted to build a real family. In the beginning, Emily would shy away from him. She didn't know how to trust new people. But Ethan never rushed her. With soft words and quiet patience, he slowly helped her let go of her fear. And the day she called him Daddy, his heart could barely hold the joy. But even in that happiness, a shadow remained. There were still truths Claire had not told him. Ethan could feel it. A silence behind her eyes. A weight she still carried alone. One night, Ethan was putting Emily to sleep in his arms. She looked up at him with her small tired eyes. And whispered again, "Please don't leave, Daddy." He held her tighter. And promised himself he never would. But the past has a way of finding its voice. A phone call came. Late into the night. It was his lawyer. And something in his voice was different. Shaky. Almost afraid. "Ethan. There's something we found. Something important. About Claire and Emily." Ethan's hands went cold. His breath paused in his chest. Was he ready for the truth? The truth he had never seen coming. The truth that might break him. The next day, he sat across from Claire, looking into her eyes. Eyes that held both love and sorrow. And Claire, with tears she could no longer hide, told him everything. That Emily's story was more complicated than he knew. That she wasn't just his daughter. That there was something else. Something that would forever change the way he saw his life. Ethan listened. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, he opened his heart, admitted his own mistakes, and chose not to run from the pain, but to walk into it. With love. With forgiveness. With a new beginning. A journey. Not backward, but forward. With Claire. And the child who had saved his soul. And that night, when Emily once again whispered in her tiny voice, "Please don't leave, Daddy," Ethan smiled this time. And whispered back, "Never again."